The recently Christianized early medieval Europe was a savage land where killing a person was often seen as a good option to end an argument, and this attitude seeped into every aspect of a life, including to the holy walls of nunnery. In the 6th century, 2 excess princesses, born to Frankish rulers, were sent to a convent, a typical habit at the time to offload the unneeded female family members. The Frankish princess Clotild was the child of King Charibert of the Merovingian dynasty and his concubine, a wool carter's daughter. Clotild's cousin, Princess Basina, daughter of King Chilperic, had also been sent to the nunnery, arriving at the tender age of 7 after an assassination attempt on her family. But by then, Basina had already been raped by soldiers and had lost her lands too. They were expected to accept their fate and dedicate themselves to God. However, something went wrong with those princess nuns. At the spring of 589, they took an issue with Abbess Lubovera, who wasn't showing them the royal respect they were due. They gathered about 40 nuns, marched out of the convent, and demanded the abbess to be expelled. And then, nothing happened. Some nuns complaining was not worthy of anyone's attention. So the nuns, now back at their Poitiers convent, sought sanctuary at the Church of St. Hilary, from where they recruited an army of cutthroats and outlaws to defend them, including a notorious murderer, Childeric, the Saxon. The Church of St. Hilary was turned into a fortress for the nuns and their outlaw gang, who were using it as a base to attack Abbess and surrounding lands. Now, finally, they had the church attention, who sent a commission consisting of 4 bishops, deacons, and clerics to St. Hilary, where they were promptly beaten up by the nuns and their newfound bandit friends. And then things really came to a head. Clotild, one of the bandit Nun leaders, urged her gang of mercenaries to seize all the convent's lands and beat up any who tried to resist, drag the abbess out, and throw her from the roof. The outlaws broke in during the night, and the abbess was only saved from being murdered by another outlaw who presumably had some qualms about killing an abbess in front of the relic of the true cross. So, she was captured and held prisoner in Basina's chamber near St. Hilary, while the convent was looted. Outraged, the Bishop Maroveus of Poitiers ordered the townspeople to break into the house and release the abbess. But Clotild coolly handpicked a group of men, giving them orders to kill the abbess at once, should there be any attempt at rescue. In spite of this, a royal envoy managed to snatch the abbess back, but that only led to more violence, in which men were slaughtered in the holiest places in the abbey, including the shrine of the Holy Cross. Adding to the chaos, Clotild and Basina, the instigators of the rebellion, had a falling out, and this sparked further hostilities between their respective supporters. According to the chronicler of the time, scarcely a day passed without a murder, or an hour without a quarrel, or a moment without tears. From there, things descended into total anarchy, where each of the nuns were running their own bandit squad, who were looting around and fighting amongst each other. Ultimately, the rebellion was quelled by the king's forces, under the leadership of Count Mako, who decimated the ranks of mercenaries hired by the nuns, driving the survivors into the shelter of the forest. As for the nuns themselves, then the punishment for them was an excommunication, which was considered a terrible sentence by the church, since they would be excluded from most normal aspects of life, and if they died in that state, would go straight to the eternal fires of hell. But since the pair had been excommunicated several times throughout the rebellion, without it curbing their behavior in the least, we can probably conclude that it didn't worry them too much. In any case, thanks to intervention of King Childebert II, the church council was persuaded to restore them to grace a few months later. Perhaps the king intervened because he knew if the sweet little princesses were not readmitted to the church, he'd have no chance of banishing them safely to a convent again, and he didn't want to risk those two running around his kingdom. Basina did return to the life of a nun in Sainte-Croix in Poitiers, and, so the chroniclers say, lived there in obedience for the rest of her life. But Clotild had no intention of meekly returning to a nunnery. Despite being illegitimate, She persuaded the king's mother, the infamous Queen Brunhilda, to grant her lands which she ruled until her death. Such was the story of the bandit nuns of Poitiers, who fought and by the looks of it got what they wanted at the end.